Hey everybody, Lawrence here with Dirty Basement Terrain coming at you with another video. In this one, it's going to be part 2 of our fantasy building. This. We're basically going to, in this episode, I'm basically going to cover the painting using some pigment powder and all this other happy hoo-ha. Basically, make it look from raw foam to something that you actually want on your table. So let's get to it, and I hope you enjoy. All right, let's do everybody's favorite stop, black Mod Podge. Even though I've already primered this with my airbrush, with some airbrush primer, I still want to put the Mod Podge, do the black Mod Podge step, mainly to give it a little extra protection because those foam shingles are fragile and they're going to need a little bit of strengthening to them. So since I'm Mod Podging the shingles, I'm going to Mod Podge everything. It's not going to hurt to give the whole thing a little extra protection, so. Now that the whole thing's Mod Podged, I'm going to glue on the windows that I had made previously. Unfortunately, I did lose the footage where I used some UV resin to make the glass for the windows, so sorry for that. But in the granny grading, there's UV resin that I cured to give it the glass look. But as of right now, I'm just using some standard PVA and gluing all the windows onto the spot they're going to go. And then to hold them in place so they don't shift around afterwards, I'm going to use some pins to make sure they don't slide around. And of course here I'm using my homemade texture paste. It's just a mixture of spackle or wall filler, some sand, some PVA glue, and some paint for color. I'm going to be brushing it on into all the different spots that I want to have stucco. Basically in between all the timber frames. Here I'm finally adding some color to it. I'm going with my standard dark blue gray from Apple Barrel. Like I said, you can choose whatever color you want, but it should be a dark gray or some such color. This is just your base color, and a good chunk of it's not even going to be seen once you're done. But you want to water it down a little bit like I did in that little plastic cup, even though I didn't show. It'll help get it down into the nooks and crannies if you want to do that. Well, I had accidentally forgot to hit the record button on my camera when I did the base color for all the woodwork, but I used a burnt umber, 100% covers, you know the drill. But here I'm using a nutmeg brown for a mid-tone, and I'm going for like 75% coverage, maybe a little more. I'm just trying I just don't want to get it down into all the deep recesses or the deepest grooves of the texturing. And I said this is just a mid-tone color, and there will be another one yet. And here I'm using a couple different random colors to paint out a few random individual bricks. I think the one that I'm showing right now is nutmeg brown. This is just to give it a little variation in the brick so it doesn't look quite so plain and honestly boring. I'm also going to be using some burnt umber, I think, and some rookwood red. And I think the other color I use is some true ochre, but you can pick your own colors if you want. Doing this just gives a little visual interest to the brickwork. And here I'm using a cheap makeup brush I got from the Dollar Tree to give all the wood, shingles, and all the timber framing a quick light dry brush. Using Apple Barrel's Territorial Beige, basically a really light brown to get all the highlights and the edges. Like I said, this is a quick light dry brush to bring up the highlights and to basically make everything pop a little bit. And here I'm doing a mid-tone color, Apple Barrel's Pewter Gray, which is a gray. And I'm, like I said, doing an overbrush on all the stonework. And I'm even painting over the stones that I picked out for a different color. The slight color will show through. Don't worry about that. But so, like I said, you want to get maybe roughly 75 to 85% coverage in here. You don't want to get like into the cracks and whatnot, because then it'll just like one big blob gray. And we don't really want that. We want to be all the different individual bricks to be seen. And now I'm doing a dry brush with another cheap makeup brush from the Dollar Tree, but a small one. And for this, I'm using Apple Barrel's Granite Gray. It's my go-to for like a light dry brush highlighting on stonework. And for all the brickwork, I'm trying to dry brush from the highest point down, so it kind of looks like the bricks are picking up sunlight. So, as I said, I'm just trying to actually get it so it looks pretty. I gotta say that in almost every video. But yeah, again, this is just a quick light dry brush on all the different stonework, including the window frames, which I made stone for this project.
Okay, now I'm going to give all the stucco work base color. I'm actually using the territorial beige I used on the woodwork, but again, this is just the base coat, so this has turned into my... I don't use a whole lot of variations in colors for like the majority of what I do paint. So right now I'm just trying to paint around the edges against the woodwork because I'm trying to avoid, hitting the woodwork with the paint. But again, this is just a base coat, and I'm trying to get 100% coverage on all the stucco work with this color. And here I'm using Deco Art sand color to give it like an overbrush or a dry brush. The small dry brush I was using just wasn't working out, so I just went to a standard paintbrush and just started doing an overbrush. And I said I'm going for about 75% coverage on this, maybe a little heavier, but it's an overbrush. And here I'm just using a little bit of Folk Arts antique copper on all the metalwork. Basically the strips on the door and then the door handle itself. I figured the copper would make those two bits of metal pop out a little bit. I didn't want to go with a standard steel. I like the color of copper better. That's just my personal choice. Okay, I'm using a wash on all the woodwork and stonework here. I'm using a black wash. Normally I use dark brown. I wanted to go with black this time, at least on the wood and the stone. Don't ask me why I'm trying to go from the wood and do that all at one shot and then do the stone, but in my head it seemed to make sense. But again, like I said, I'm just giving everything a good wash with a brush. I'm kind of patting more than brushing because that way the paint won't smear, but I do wind up actually brushing it on, so it seemed to work just fine. And here I'm going to be using a dark brown wash that I made for all the stucco. And so I'm just basically trying to get, full coverage on all the stucco and trying to keep it off the wood and stone. Now that all the wash is dry, I'm actually going to go back again on all the woodwork here with the Territorial Beige and do a quick light dry brush to bring up all the detail work again that the wash is somewhat hidden. But again, it's just a quick light dry brush. I'm using a small dry makeup brush because I wanted to avoid smashing it all over the place. And I wanted a little bit of control, especially since I was going to be doing all the timber work and stuff with this step, and also the doors. So I needed a little bit of control. That's why I went with the smaller brush. And here I'm hitting up the stonework with the granite gray again, and I'm working from the top, working down just to look like, the sun is hitting it or natural light is showing up the edges. But this is just basically to bring up the edge highlights real quick and then maybe, again, make it look pretty. And here I'm using the sand color again to bring up the highlights of all the stucco work I've done. Just basically do a quick dry brush on it just to make it look, I still want it to look kind of dirty and dingy. That's just how I like my stuff to look. But I didn't want to make it look like mud because it is stucco and the standard seems to be a little bit light colored, so that's what I'm doing. Okay, and here I'm using a homemade pigment powder made from soft pastel chalks, black. I wanted to give the chimney kind of like a sooty look, or especially around the top, because there's a lot of smoke coming out. So I just want to do some grayish black shadows and around, different areas where soot may gather, and some of the spots I just thought, yeah, that'll look cool, and so I did. And here I'm using another homemade pigment powder, basically a dark brown, just to get some dirty look to the corners and edges where dirt may gather. I'm going to do a little bit underneath the windows, kind of look like, maybe rain and drag some dirt down. But again, this is just just to dirty it up some, and around different corners and areas where dirt would gather up. So this is just to give it a lived-in look, I guess. I don't know. I did it because I thought it looked cool, honestly. And once I was actually done placing all the pigment powder, I did use a little misting bottle full of IPA, and I sprayed all those different spots that I used the powder in to set it so it wouldn't rub off. Will you lose some of that powdery look? Yeah, but it'll stay there. So I found that if you go a little bit extra heavier, you'll get what you want after you spray it. So I mean, go a little heavy with the powder. Okay, here I'm using some moss paste that I mixed up, and you can see I've already added some, but I'm just adding in different spots where moss might grow, and honestly, I'm adding moss to spots where I messed up. That's why I like using moss like this. You can use it to hide all your screw-ups, or at least some of them. But again, I'm just placing it in little corners and stuff where I think it would look good. And here it is, all done and pretty with some pretty glamour shots. I was actually really happy with how this one turned out. Was doing the brick and shingle work tedious? Yes it was, but very happy with how it turned out. So I hope you guys like it.
Hey everybody, if you made it this far, it means you watch it to the end, and as always, I do appreciate it. I know I always say that, but I actually do appreciate those who can watch the whole and stand to listen to my voice the entire video. But I mean, if you liked it, guys, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more are coming. Click subscribe. Leave a comment down below. Yes, I'm still remembering it's down there. If you want to get a hold of me directly, you can come to my Discord page. There's a link to it on the About tab of the Dirty Basement Terrain page. Lots of people there. Come check it out if you want. And you know what? Show off the stuff you make. Man, I'd love to see your stuff. But about this project, though, it did take some extra time. And I'll be honest with you, brickwork and doing individual shingles like I did on this one, it can be tedious. But like I said, just put on a podcast or something else to watch, and it'll go quickly. You won't notice that it's taking a while. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope maybe it inspires you to build something similar of your own. But as always, guys, when you're making terrain, remember, the only person you got to worry about is you, because it's your terrain.